Imagine waking up to a world where the people you pass on the street might be hardened killers unleashed by your own government. Can the pulse of fear pounding in your veins really be silenced by empty promises? In Russia's crumbling shadow, where 180,000 released convicts roam free after a deadly bargain, the streets echo with unspoken terror. To recap the unfolding nightmare, in key areas like the Eastern Urals and North Caucasus, police forces have dwindled by 50% in 5 years. In some isolated spots, that drop hits a staggering 90%. Picture empty villages where a single officer patrols vast swaths of land, the scent of neglect heavy in the air. Leningrad region's districts, once guarded by 7 officers, now rely on just one alone figure against the encroaching darkness. But why has this abyss opened? The scent of desperation lingers in every corner. Patrol officers earn a pitiful 38,000 rubles, about $3.80 less than a Moscow supermarket cash register's clang. Yet the Kremlin showers war recruits with bonuses up to 200,000 rubles, enticing the young away. Capable workers flee the army or cross borders, leaving policing a forsaken path. No one wants this grind anymore. The rot spreads beyond the badge. The justice system twists in agony, a system warped by preferential treatment for those who fought. The Wagner-launched amnesty plan from 2022 to 2023 erased criminal pasts for frontline service, now handed to the Ministry of Defense since 2024. Even today, military stints shave sentences short. Courts whisper heroism for returning fighters. Documented cases show veterans getting softer penalties, cited for patriotism's sake. Worse still, expunged records let ex-Wagner members face trial as novices on new offenses. Horrendous acts like grave assaults or worse slip through with leniency. Independent outlet Medusa lays this bare in chilling detail. Year 2023 brought the Kremlin's chilling edict to media, silence on crimes by returning troops. That's it. Don't shatter the facade of national spirit. The people remain blind to the surge of shadows on their pavements. Judges bend with whispers of frontline valor. Though hero stays unspoken, the outcomes scream blind indulgence. Rhetorical echoes linger. What happens when wolves wear veteran tags? A cascade of fear floods the soul. Will this corrupt mercy fuel an unstoppable storm? Imagine the weight of silence in a courtroom, punctuated by the distant echo of gunfire that still rings in veterans' ears, while the air thickens with the stench of unresolved grief and moral decay. Does the state's mercy for those who killed on command now shield them from justice at home? In Russia's fractured heart, judicial leniency has morphed into a twisted shield, amplifying the chaos unleashed by Putin's desperate gambit. In districts once patrolled by 7 vigilant officers, now a solitary figure clutches the reins over sprawling hundreds of square kilometers, the crunch of gravel under boots a lone heartbeat against the void. Why this unraveling? Blend economic blight with political betrayal, and the recipe emerges. A patrol officer's meager 38,000 rubles, roughly $380, pales against the clamor of dozens shuffling carts at a Moscow supermarket. Meanwhile, the Kremlin dangles hundreds of thousands in signing bonuses for frontline recruits. Putin waves allowances up to 200,000 rubles at willing soldiers. The young and sturdy either march into uniform or vanish across borders. Policing? An unattractive relic, abandoned in the dust. But this plague doesn't halt at blue uniforms. The judicial web ensnares all in its fraying threads. The Amnesty for Service scheme, birthed through Wagner from 2022 to 2023, wiped slates clean for war service. By 2024, the Ministry of Defense carries the torch. Yet participating in battles still trims convictions short. Policies teeter on thin legality, unleashing ruinous fallout. Judges hail some returnees as unspoken champions. Countless records reveal lighter penalties for crimes, justified by displays of national fervor. More harrowing, many Wagner alumni, recidivist ex-cons, face charges anew without prior blotches, treated as debut offenders due to erased histories. Thus, grave deeds, murderous rampages or brutal harm evade full reckoning with softened grips. Independent Medusa chronicled it vividly. A 2023 Kremlin mandate to outlets? Blunt and chilling, omit tales of atrocities by homebound soldiers. Safeguard the people's resolve. Citizens stay oblivious to the swelling tide of endangerment on familiar paths. Magistrates soften for mere battlefield presence. Officially, hero eludes the script, yet verdicts betray indulgent favoritism. Picture the courtroom hush. Interrupted by phantom pains of comrades lost, the metallic edge of unholstered badges, and the faint acidity of suppressed rage lingering. Rhetorical daggers, is this benevolence a dagger veiled, rewarding blood with fleeting freedom? Or a powder keg ticking toward rebellion? What if one veteran's audacity shatters the facade, exposing the regime's gamble as doomed? In the shadows of Russia's crumbling justice system, judges dole out mercy to battlefield returnees, leniency for crimes that shatter lives, all while the Kremlin silences the truth, urging media to bury the horrors. What twisted loyalty buys such blind favors? Picture it, the stench of old courtrooms, ink-stained papers rustling like whispers of betrayal, judges' gavels echoing softer for those who've spilled blood elsewhere. But this mercy masks a far darker storm. Forgotten sons haunt the halls of fading justice. Mediazona's grim December 2025 tally reveals 90,000 desperate pleas, families clawing to declare soldiers dead, since mid-2024. 2,500 new court filings flood in weekly, like tidal waves of unanswered grief. What price does the Kremlin pay to dodge defeat's cost? Feel the cold marble floors under mourning feet, the distant hum of bureaucracy smothering sobs. Putin evades compensation, denies burials, pretending the dead are mere ghosts, vanished into the mist of official doublespeak, avoiding the bitter pill of military collapse. Families spiral down endless corridors, trapped between courtroom purgatory and the violence erupting on shadowed streets. Now, let's unearth the monsters roaming free. These aren't seasoned warriors of legend, no polished reflexes or disciplined minds, they're raw impulses in human form, fueled by boozy hazes, the metallic tang of reloaded weapons lingering on their skin, trauma's cruel scent of sweat and fear, a reckless belief in getting away with it all, transforming them into walking catastrophes. Ticking explosives in every alley. Imagine the Ulyanovsk region's unlit night. Alexander Lomachin, fresh from the Z-Storm unit's brutal grip, stabs a disabled man, a quarrel drowned in vodka's burn, what started as words escalates to screams and blood pooling warm on concrete, shocking in its ordinary route, yet savage beyond rage, a killer's trained tremor, not passion, but the ingrained rhythm of endless combat. This dark tale spirals further, urging us to question, how thin is the line between redeemed soul and unstoppable force? As Courtsway fades, and unheard voices scream for justice, what if these shadows start whispering back? The situation in the Russian heartland is spiraling into chaos faster than anyone expected. Just recently, in the Ulyanovsk region, an incident unfolded that chilled everyone to the bone. Alexander Lomachin, a veteran from the Z-Storm unit, returned home after months of war. What should have been a moment of relief turned into horror. After an alcohol-fueled argument, he stabbed and took the life of a disabled man. The scariest part? It all started as a simple fight over nothing. But this was no ordinary outburst. This was the instinct of a mind hardened by violence and trauma. And it's just the beginning. Another disturbing case involves Rozamakin, a man who fought under Wagner. On his 10th day of freedom, he murdered an elderly woman who owned the room he was renting. Yet even more chilling is the story of Mikhail Mulichkov, a former Wagner fighter who, in a caravan, killed 2 sleeping people without remorse. These acts are shocking, not simply because of their brutality, but because they reveal something far darker behind them. What makes this reality truly terrifying is what happens in the courts. When these hardened criminals appear before judges, they show no regret. Instead, they openly declare their intentions. One such criminal, standing before the court, said, "I can still be useful. I can send more Ukrainians to the next world." His words weren't just arrogance, they were a cry for return to violence. It's as if the moral fabric of society has completely unraveled. The state's own data confirms this deterioration. In the first half of 2025, murders involving military personnel doubled from the previous year, totaling 116 cases. Serious crimes reached an unprecedented 333,000, a 15-year high. The country is gripped by fear. Citizens walk the streets wondering if the person next to them is a pardoned murderer. Law enforcement? Powerless. The new elite, those who have been glorified by the regime, have turned into untouchable threats. The fabric of Russia is cracking, fractures running deeper than anyone dared imagine. How can a nation survive when its own people are now its enemies? The more we look, the more it seems chaos is no longer a distant threat, it's already here, lurking in every shadow, every alley, every court. The senior advisor to Ukraine's president, Mikhail Podolyak, recently stated that the ongoing war has effectively suppressed social unrest and diverted attention from the country's economic failures. He warned that if this conflict concludes without a victory, Vladimir Putin's regime could face a fate similar to that of the Bolsheviks in 1917. Ironically, the war has acted as a lifeline for Putin's government, allowing it to tighten control and centralize power among loyalists like Sergei Shoigu and Nikolai Patrushev. The security services, especially the FSB, have increased their influence over society, suppressing dissent and silencing critics. But what if the current momentum shifts? A leading political analyst warns that if Russia is perceived to be losing, especially if Ukraine claims victory, Putin could face the end of his rule or worse. History offers a stark warning. The Soviet collapse was partly driven by the failure to defeat Afghan fighters between 1979 and 1989. Today, Ukraine has become Putin's new Afghanistan. The Kremlin cannot afford to halt the war or admit defeat, it's become the very air that sustains his regime's survival. Yet, as 2025 closes, cracks are forming. The Russian people are growing tired of the endless conflict. Only a quarter of the population supports mobilization efforts. The entire country is feeling the strain economically, morally, and legally. The war is no longer a distant fight, it's knocking at every Russian doorstep. Order has unraveled. Fear and chaos reign. When the guns finally fall silent, the true battle may just begin on the streets of Russia. The question now is, what will happen when the war ends? Will the nation fracture from within? Or will new cracks emerge that threaten the very foundation of Putin's power? The future holds dangerous surprises, and the only certainty is upheaval. What are your thoughts on this looming crisis? Share your insights in the comments. Your voice matters in understanding the unfolding story. Stay tuned for more insights, and see you in the next reveal of the truth behind the headlines. In the haunting aftermath, ordinary Russians tremble at shadows on their streets. Freed criminals roam with guns and unquenched rage, while lawlessness erodes the nation's core. Civilians now witness the brutal truth. Instead of defenders, the regime arms monsters and sets them loose. Can you feel the chill crawling up your spine? What happens when protectors morph into predators, turning peaceful parks into battlegrounds? But brace yourself, the terror spirals deeper, choking Russia's very soul. In a sudden memory, dust swirls under dim lights as Alexander pulls the trigger, the metallic tang of blood mixing with stale vodka in his mouth. Screams echo from the battlefield, raw and unending. His hands, gritty with mud and gunpowder, tremble no more, they become tools of instinct, not humanity. That trauma haunts him still, a sensory scar he wears like invisible armor back home. Civilians gaze upon this betrayal. The regime shields criminals rather than citizens. Even worse, chaos tightens its grip economically. Soaring crime drains local budgets on security. Riots freeze investments, grinding daily life to a halt. Provincial towns fade to dreary shadows, zones where veterans instill fear, and cops shrink from the fight. Picture Rozamikin's case, police vowed vigilance, yet another life extinguished in silence. Such failures expose Putin's grip weakening at every corner. This isn't mere spikes in violence, it's decay in Russia's security fabric, corroding from within. Amid internal paranoia, the regime shifts focus. Real dangers like terrors and gangs fade. Instead, the FSB stalks brilliant minds. A fresh law bars Russian scientists from foreign ties without approval, one wrong step, and treason awaits. Think of Anatoly Maslov and Alexander Shiplyuk, pioneers in hypersonic tech. Their genius, shackled by arrest, reveals agony. Putin crushes the brains crafting his defenses. Is this genius or utter folly? A strategic blunder, sacrificing innovation for suspicion. Could this smoldering fury erupt against Putin's Iron Throne, unyielding for decades? Absolutely, it looms. Witnesses in St. Petersburg ignite the flame. Schools rise, demanding his ousting. Whispers accuse his war as barbaric, labeling soldiers extremists. When merged with the 90,000 vanished families clawing through red tape, the unrest could engulf all. Will this awaken a sleeping giant, or crush Russia under rising tides? Families' faith in Kremlin frays daily, walls closing like hospitals in wartime, sterile, suffocating. Strategic whispers suggest Putin's path, tighter controls, deeper seclusion. But deep beneath, who profits from this curse? Are these former foes now kings, or pawns in a grand, unraveling scheme? As anger swells in unseen depths, one twist emerges, the very war meant to unite now splinters apart. Tens of thousands mourn without answers, their loyalty eroding amidst bureaucratic mazes. Putin's time grows scarce. What desperate gambit will he play next? Could you stomach the betrayal unfolding in your own backyard, or neighbors turn as dangerous as enemies? Freed convicts wield veteran status like a shield, embedding panic in Russia's Sensilo fabric. Lawlessness reigns unchallenged, twisting everyday life into a nightmare. Civil unrest balloons, suffocating communities with fear and financial ruin. Imagine it, grayed-out towns, once vibrant, now echo with distant gunfire and hushed whispers. The air thickens with metallic paranoia, hands clench cold on empty streets. Civilians stare down this horror, criminals unleashed, not curbed. Police hesitate, their authority frayed. In Rosamachkin's stark tale, promised watchdogs failed utterly, blood-staining the void. Fundamental security crumbles, paranoia peaking like thunder before rain. But wait, a jarring flashback pierces the haze. Alexander grips his blade, leather creaking under his grip, the sharp scent of alcohol fueling fury in a cramped room. A voice shouts, his reflex, honed in mud and madness, ignites without thought. Touch the distance in his eyes, cold as battlefield frost. That unshakable impulse surges now, unbound. This spiral worsens, crime explodes, bloating local costs on guards and walls. Investments stall, halting progress. Provincial shadows deepen, veterans bully locals, forces retreat. State's foundation decays internally, a wound too deep to heal. Yet delusion mounts inside. FSB ignores true threats, terror syndicates and smugglers. They pounce on erudite minds instead. Decree forbids foreign collaborations without consent. One misstep, and scholars face ruin. Recall Anatoly Maslov and Alexander Shiplyuk, visionaries in hypersonic edges. Imprisoned for alleged betrayal, their brilliance dims. Putin dismantles creators of secrets he guards. Strategic blunder, pure poison. Might this festering wrath strike Putin's enduring rule? Yes, dangerously so. Evidence burns in St. Petersburg. Institutions rally, forcing his exit. Accusations paint war as overreach, veterans as renegades. Paired with 90,000 phantoms haunting limbo, uprising potential multiplies. Families batter bureaucratic barriers, devotion to Kremlin dissolving slow and sure. Strategic analyses foresee Kremlin's response, intensified clampdown, greater withdrawal. Can loyalty shatter fully, igniting revolution, or will unseen forces twist fate anew? Families as grief fanned in courts, weaving dissent like frost on glass. What shadow play hides beyond the veil? Is this justice unmoored, or chaos sown from above? As anger brews silent storms, Putin's grip teeters at abyss's edge. Have you ever felt the icy grip of fear on your own doorstep? Imagine stepping into a crumbling world where the monsters aren't in fairy tales, they're your neighbors, armed and unleashed. Last time, we uncovered how ordinary Russians now tremble at the sight of fellow citizens, as government forces stand powerless against these new elites crowned by Putin. Unforgivable fractures are splintering the nation, leaving families shattered in bureaucratic mazes, desperate for answers about loved ones lost to war. Suddenly, a harrowing memory flashes back. The acrid stench of gunpowder clung to the air like a toxic shroud, as boots crunched over frost-cracked earth. A veteran's calloused hands trembled, gripping a blood-stained blade, while distant artillery rumbled like thunder's cruel echo, evoking the primal dread of endless trenches. This isn't just history, it's the raw terror birthing today's chaos. Why does the leadership arm criminals instead of shielding the innocent? Answer that, and you'll see the regime's twisted betrayal unfolding. Citizens watch in horror as authorities hand firearms to felons, transforming protectors into predators. The outrage deepens as soaring crime statistics choke economic veins and stifle daily routines. Local budgets hemorrhage on heightened security, while investor flight and unrest grind progress to a halt. Outlying towns morph into shadowy voids, terror-ridden zones where frontline returnees reign supreme, and law enforcers cower in retreat. Consider the chilling case of Rasamushin, police vows to monitor failed miserably. Another life snuffed out in preventable slaughter. This exposes the regime's frailty, its grip loosening at every junction. Yet beyond isolated atrocities lies the systematic rot eroding Russia's core security framework. Within borders, suspicion balloons to nightmarish peaks. Paranoid eyes avert true dangers like insurgent networks or underworld syndicates, fixating instead on homeland brilliance. A draconian edict bars scientists from global ties sans secret police sanction. Elite innovators in hypersonic weaponry, including Anatoly Maslov and Alexander Shiplyuk, rot in cells accused of betrayal. By smothering the genius forging those defenses, Putin obliterates the intellectual engines powering his ambitions. Is this folly not suicidal sabotage? Might seething fury from Russia's underbelly finally shatter Putin's ironclad reign after decades? Absolutely imaginable. Witness St. Petersburg's uprising, academic bastions openly urged his ouster, denouncing the so-called special operation and lambasting troops with incendiary views. Fuse this insurrection spark with the haunting specter of 90,000 phantom soldiers, families ensnared in court sagas, futures condemned to uncertainty. What unforeseen upheaval lurks as fury collides with bureaucracy's dead end? Stay tuned, the storm is brewing, and nothing will be spared. Imagine the cold echo of empty courtrooms, where desperate whispers fill the air like a chilling fog. In our last tale, we uncovered shocking unrest in St. Petersburg, where bold voices in educational halls called for Putin's ouster, slamming the so-called special military operation and venting fury against frontline fighters. This brewing storm of rebellion grows deadlier when fused with the haunting saga of 90,000 vanished souls, families shattered by unanswered pleas. But what if the Kremlin's iron grip is slipping right through its fingers? Picture this, tens of thousands of heartbroken families, their eyes red from endless tears, pounding on bureaucratic doors that slam shut like prison gates. They crave closure about loved ones lost in the chaos, yet each rejection chips away at their loyalty to the heart of power in Moscow. The air thickens with frustration, the scent of stale coffee and faded hope hanging heavy in government halls. How can a leader hold a nation together when trust dissolves like mist in the morning sun? In this dire hour, what desperate moves might Putin unleash? Experts whisper grim forecasts. The Kremlin could tighten its chokehold, sealing borders and silencing voices with heavier chains of isolation. Yet, cracks spiderweb through the regime's core. The powerful insiders, those tycoons and top brass, sense the vessel sinking fast. Feel the urgency in hurried boardrooms, where fortunes shift like sand underfoot. Vast sums flee to safe havens in Dubai's glittering towers and Istanbul's bustling markets, sparking a frenzy among the elite. Like startled creatures fleeing a storm, they're jumping ship, their panic a silent scream echoing through shadowed corridors. Could this exodus unravel everything from within? As Putin rallies troops to crush rising crowds with unyielding force, he'll stoke fears of shadowy foes beyond the borders, binding his die-hard followers in a web of imagined peril. The metallic tang of tension bites the air during late-night strategy sessions, hearts pounding with calculated dread. But here's the twist that shatters illusions: the raw truth pulsing on Russia's cobblestone streets overpowers any scripted tale from the state media. Neighbors glance sideways, the crunch of footsteps on frost-cracked sidewalks now laced with unease. Why does this groundswell of fear eclipse the Kremlin's grand deceptions? At the root of this unraveling nightmare lies Vladimir Putin's unyielding obsession with the conflict in Ukraine. Why won't he release this vice as his homeland teeters on the brink of ruin? His command, once a towering fortress, wasn't forged in unbreakable steel. Back in 2022, as forces crossed into Ukraine, his popularity lingered at 60 to 70%, buoyed by a steady economy and a barrage of polished broadcasts. Yet, fissures had already snaked through the foundation. Recall the thunderous rallies of 2018, where throngs roared against pension cuts, their chants vibrating like distant thunder. Then, Alexei Navalny's revelations pierced the veil, exposing rot in high places, followed by the bungled response to the COVID-19 scourge that left hospitals gasping and trust evaporating like breath on a winter pane. Public faith plummeted. A slow bleed turning into a flood. Then, the invasion ignited a seismic shift. The regime spun a vivid yarn, a crusade against supposed Nazis and encirclement by NATO's shadow. This story, sharp as a blade, excuses bold overreaches and binds society in chains of duty. Under the weight of crackdowns, more than 20,000 who marched against the war felt handcuffs snap cold against wrists, their voices muffled in dim cells. The bitter chill of detention lingers, a reminder of silenced dissent. Yet, this endless struggle doubles as a cunning veil over Russia's crumbling wealth. By 2025, prices spiral in a 20% hyperinflation whirlwind, the ruble halved from its pre-conflict strength, wallets thinning like worn leather. Families huddle by flickering lights, counting coins that buy less each day, the sour taste of scarcity on every tongue. Officials point fingers westward, decrying sabotage, but the true culprit stares back from the mirror, their own flawed decrees and squandered treasures. As breadlines snake longer and shadows deepen, one burning question haunts the frostbitten nights: what if this facade crumbles entirely, unleashing a fury Putin can no longer contain?